Mackay to close the debate on behalf of the Justice Committee.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. As Deputy Convener of the Justice Committee, I'm pleased to be able to close today's debate on the Justice Committee's report on the role and purpose of the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service. Firstly, can I thank the Convener, my colleagues in the committee, particularly Fulton McGregor, who broke his paternity leave to come to the Chamber and make a speech today. That's dedication to duty. And the excellent work done by the clerks, whose support was invaluable throughout. Today we've had a generally collaborative debate, I think, as Ben McPherson said, and I hope we've got to the core of this inquiry where all viewpoints must be considered. I have to say at the outset that I thought the convener's opening statement was very gloomy, painted a gloomy picture, and I'll go on to explain why as we go along. Presiding Officer, at the outset, I'd like to say that the committee's work in carrying out this report would not have been possible without the cooperation of the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service. Accordingly, I'd like to thank the Lord Advocate and Crown Agent David Harvey for their assistance, their openness and their complete willingness to help us conduct this inquiry. I'm sure I speak for my colleagues when I say we were impressed with all participants' total cooperation, whether during evidence sessions or during court visits and committee trips to various locations. And I particularly thank all those who gave evidence, which for some witnesses was certainly not easy. As a new member of the Justice Committee, and again I'm sure I speak for fellow new members in the committee, I feel this major undertaking was the best initiation into understanding the framework of our legal system I could have asked for, and it helped me enormously as I undertook a steep learning curve. As we've heard in the Chamber today, there are highs and lows in the report. It's such a wide-ranging report, I don't have time to go through it all in great detail, but I hope to cover the essence of the standout parts. So I'll start to go into some of the contributions now. Mary Evans spoke of the Victim Information and Advice Service and how its remit had vastly increased since 2001 when it was set up. She also spoke of Dr. Leslie Thompson's review of victim care in the justice sector and endorsed the single point of contact for victims, which I passionately believe in too. She said we owe it to victims to recognise and accommodate their needs. And then she made a passionate plea for an improvement in wildlife crime convictions. Douglas Ross talked about the need for digital strategy to be progressed. He also spoke about court closures, and again a very gloomy view, and we could bandy statistics all day, but I mean the evidence that we have is that 75% of sheriff courts experience no impact on these, and in fact a lot of the cases that their input fell, and the target for domestic abuse was met in full. So I think, as Stuart Stevenson said, it's a balancing of views on this issue. And if I had to believe anyone, I think I'd know who I believed. Yes.
Oliver Mundell.
I thank the member for taking an intervention, and I wonder if the member would accept that it's not just about efficiency and about how many cases make it through the court, but it's also about how local people feel, including victims and witnesses, who in some cases are now being asked to travel long distances for their day in court.
Well done, Rona Mackay.
Yes, I accept what you're saying, but I mean, I accept what you're saying about people having to travel, but you know, there's downsides to everything, and there's no evidence to say it's been of great detriment so far. Claire Baker spoke of court closures too, but she welcomed the positive work being done on domestic abuse and urged that we deal with the issue sensitively. She said that rape victims should always be treated in criminal court, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. Ben McPherson spoke of crime and the fear of how the fear of crime has fallen, but progress is still required. He also spoke about the need to work collaboratively at a local level, and talked of examples in his own community where cops have been proactive with him and his own community to combat crime in North Edinburgh, which was really encouraging. Oliver Mundell wanted to hear more from local fiscals and wanted them to speak out publicly. He praised the National Sexual Crimes Unit, and I agree with him on that. He didn't praise the centralised marking system. and I urge caution around more transformative change. John Finney talked of central marking options and the role of COPs. He quoted Scottish Women's Aid by saying victims and witnesses' relationship is a human rights issue, which I agree with. And he praised the professionalism and dedication on staff. He welcomed the independent review of legal aid and praised work on sex abuse and sex crimes being done. Just on the victims and witnesses that we've been talking about, the Victims and Witnesses Scotland Act 2014 enshrines certain rights, such as the early rights to information through the publication of the Victims Code for Scotland, and the right to review a decision not to prosecute, and eligibility to special measures such as giving evidence from behind a screen to shield the witnesses from the accused, or giving evidence via video link. The committee also heard during our evidence session from the Cabinet Secretary for Justice that there's a compelling case for further action to be taken to allow child witnesses to give pre-recorded evidence well in advance of the trial, as happens in many other European countries. And like Fulton McGregor, I was very pleased to hear the Lord Advocate today agree with this. I would welcome this development, as it would undoubtedly lessen the trauma to children expected to give evidence in a formal court environment. Liam MacArthur wanted more support for victims and children and vulnerable witnesses, which I'm sure he would agree with what I've just said. But he asked to keep regionalised marking under review. He also spoke of cybercrime and how it might be skewing the crime statistics slightly due to an element of displacement. Stuart Stevenson gave his usual entertaining speech on mentioning the case of John McFeet and his 1830 trial, where he was transported to New South Wales for theft, comparing it to the way things are today. But he said crime level was the lowest in 40 years, and he praised the prosecutors on that. He also said well-managed change is a force for good. Alexander Stewart possibly gave the gloomiest outlook of all in the court today. I didn't hear one positive thing that he said about our report. And I don't know if that was deliberate or just an oversight. But he was saying that centralisation had gone too far. But he also was asking for more government control, and I begin to wonder if he really believes in an independent judiciary, the way he was talking. So that was quite interesting. Gordon Lyndhurst spoke of the Victims Code, vulnerable victims missing out in support, and said there'd been a lack of communication. Fulton McGregor talked of the cuts imposed by Westminster, which had a massive effect on the budget here. He talked of his professional experience in domestic violence and the importance of the digital enhancement. And he also spoke of children giving evidence. Mary Fee talked of the disconnect between prosecutor and victim and staffing and resources concerns. And she said support for vulnerable witnesses often fell short, and we did hear that. And I think that's something that has been taken on board and will most certainly be addressed. And she also wanted more collaboration between the third sector and all stakeholders in the third sector. I hope I haven't missed anybody out. Just to go back to the digital strategy, I mean, modernisation will go a long way to dealing with problems highlighted such as churn and delays, etc. And I think as a committee we'll keep a very close eye on the progress of that to get it brought forward as quickly as possible. I think I'm running out of time, Presiding Officer. Just to conclude, just to say that there's a clear will on the part of all stakeholders involved in our inquiry to modernise the Scottish justice system and create a framework suited to the ever-changing needs of the 21st century. It may be a large mountain to climb, but the dedication and professionalism of everyone we spoke to makes me assured that we will reach that summit and keep the Scottish justice system's worldwide reputation as a beacon of fairness and a model to aspire to. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our debate on the Justice Committee inquiry. We turn now to decision time. There is one question today. The question is that motion 5982, in the name of Margaret Mitchell, on behalf of the Justice Committee, on its inquiry into the role and purpose of the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service, be agreed. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are all agreed. That concludes decision time. And we'll turn now to members' business in the name of Ivan McKee on the UK Green Deal. Just take a few moments for members to change seats.